for Dr. J.
So we're going to talk about cultural theory.
No, we're going to talk about religion. Just religion. We're not going near that.
Well, no, you can talk about how. Well, I think you kind of have to talk about how that's changed at some point. I mean, we're seeing. You're talking about getting into the churches,
Right.
I don't think that's a bad thing to talk about.
I don't think I'm ready for that conversation.
Are you disturbed by it?
Jay, I have been red pilling. And and we're going to talk about all that when we go to 83. Because it's...
You took the red pill?
I'm nibbling it. But it's not... But here's the thing.
Welcome to the Matrix.
This is the problem, right? When you are a left-leaning person and you talk about red pilling, the immediate reaction is, see, I told you it would.
Well, it looked like I couldn't reach it. You touched here. I'm like, there's no way I can. So yeah. Do I need to use the coaster?
You don't have to. That poor amp. That amp was made in 1972, so that's like, what, 28 years old? No.
Dude, no.
48.
48 years old.
Jesus, I can't math.
Clearly.
48 years old. That's a 48-year-old amp.
It's good you teach English.
Yeah, I know, right? Well, I teach my students what we call English math, which is you add a page.
Okay.
So it's +1. So if I say I want 3 pages, you better turn in 4.
Not 4 full pages, but...
You better write into the 4th.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't give me 2.5.
See,
That's not 3 full
I like
pages.
word count for a reason, because
I know.
I'll have a student turn in, I'll say 400 words.
Yeah.
I had one kid turn in 399. 0.
Well, Layman was telling me about, he does word count. And I think his was like 500. And this one kid turned in 501.
And I guarantee if you go through the paper, you'll find the word very.
Yeah, right.
Just one time. I'm like, as I look at my kids, I'm like, how uncreative can you be? Just plug in another word. It's not hard.
No.
Very, just one time.
Yeah, I do the page count. And back in the day, we were talking about, like, last week in the internet thing about how we used to take handwritten or
hard copies.
Yeah. And it was hard to police them if you did page count with that. But when you do everything digital, it's very easy to police them because you have to open it up in Word. And if they turn in as a PDF, what they don't realize is that I've got the full I've got the full Acrobat. I can still check it. And I tell them, I'm like, don't.
Dumbasses.
Yeah. Page numbers. You got to write. So I tell them, if I say 3, you write into the 4th. And I tell them, I don't care if it's one word at the top of the 4th page. You're not printing this out, so you're not killing trees.
They'll do anything to get away with it.
They will. They take and they blow up the period to like 16 font. And there's a thing in my syllabus now, if I catch you doing that, you get a warning the first time. Second time, it's an automatic 0. You touch. And all I got to do is click select all. And if the font number disappears, they've done something to it. They've manipulated it. And I show them that in class. I pull it up and I say, watch. I said, it's not hard to figure out what you've done. I don't have to look. Word will tell me everything.
You can highlight everything, change it to 12, and suddenly the paper's shorter.
Yeah.
And it's like... Because I tell you can't get away with shit.
Well, that, and what they'll do is, this is a new trick they're trying. They set the line spacing to 1.15 and then hit enter twice to get their double space. That's the new trick that I have discovered that they try and do. It's just like, really, guys? Do you think I'm stupid? And I tell them, yes. You forget when I was a freshman in college, we were the first ones using Word. We were there. You're talking to one of the guys that invented these tricks. You would write everything, or you would write 3 pages in Times New Roman, it was a 5-page paper, and you'd convert it to Courier New, and it would go to 5.5.
Well, because they didn't care then.
They didn't care, and you could turn it in Courier and like, oh look, I wrote 5.5 pages. You only wrote like 3.5.
I wrote everything in Courier New, and I told them like it's going to add link to the paper, but this is what I can see. They're like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thankfully, in grad school, they're like, as long as it's good.
Well, see, yours is because of disability. Mine was because I was lazy.
But I love Courier New though, man. It's old school.
It is old school.
We
Yeah,
could do an entire show on fonts.
we should. That would be the most.
Boring episode ever. 2 people would be interested in it. It would be us.
Let me tell you why I love Georgia.
Okay. Calibri is the devil
It is
because it comes set.
Calibri and Arial. Arial's the worst. I hate Arial. And I'm not big into Helvetica.
Well, Helvetica is one of the ugliest fonts on
Yeah.
the planet. In fact, Helvetica is so ugly they made a documentary about Helvetica. It used to be on Netflix.
Yeah, I
called
remember.
Helvetica.
I watched it.
I love it. It was a great documentary.
Yeah.
About the ugliest font in the history of the world.
Yeah. I tell my students, I actually break down fonts for them. I know this has nothing to do with religion. I don't care.
Have we started already?
Watching. Oh, yeah, we started a while ago.
I was just hanging out.
Yeah.
Maybe we should do that next time. Don't tell me we started and just start chatting.
Well, I've done that twice now.
Like, I mean, about the subject.
Oh, yeah.
Because I change when I know I'm
Right.
being recorded.
Yeah.
It's like, I got to say something impressive.
No.
That's hard to do.
But see, now you completely got me off. I got to bring it back now.
Helvetica?
So we talk about like fonts in my comp classes, and I explain to them why we use the sans serif fonts or serif or whatever you want to say.
Sans serif?
Yeah.
Or the serif. Why we use
The
serif?
serif, yeah. And I blow up Times New Roman and Cambria so they can see it, and I show them how the letters just naturally go into each other.
Yes, they do.
Whereas, and then I pull up like Calibri and Arial and show them these letters are blocks. Your brain is literally stopping with every single letter, whereas with Times New Roman and Cambria, or not Cambria, Cambria and Georgia, those fonts, they roll into each other, and so your brain has an easier time processing the information. It's looking at words, not letters.
Yep.
And that's why if you read like 4 pages of Arial, you start to get a headache. A mild one, but it starts to hurt.
Yeah, see, at least with Courier New, it's blocky and easy to read.
Yeah.
The letters don't run into each other, but it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason it was the standard.
Yeah.
Because it's not hard to look at.
Yeah. It's easy to digest. So
religion.
God. God likes Times New Roman.
God.
On the 8th day, he made Times New Roman. What was it I wrote on the whiteboard one day?
Oh, Lord.
On the 8th day, God created the professor, and on the 9th day, Satan invented the student.
That's pretty accurate. Yeah. I missed that board. I miss everything about work at this point.
Yeah, I do too.
Is our building open again?
Yeah, it's been open for a while, since June 1st. I went in and actually got, like, most of those books over there I picked up from my office. It's all theory books. Part of my red pilling.
I haven't gone over there yet because the buses aren't running.
Oh yeah. Oh, what's going to happen if...
the students will come back. If the students come back, they'll start running
the
buses.
buses.
I'm not worried,
I was driving down Centennial and was being tracked by a High Point University security guy, and I know he was tracing me because I kept moving from lanes and he would follow me. And I'm
Why?
like, I don't know. I guess my car is too lower class for High Point use.
Just trying to figure out what you're doing there.
Yeah, it was ridiculous. So I got to the stoplight right below your house, and he peeled off into High Point HBU. I'm not kidding. This was ridiculous.
This was today?
This was today. This was like less than a half hour ago.
You were on Centennial.
Yeah.
And he was following you.
He was tracing me.
He's not even on campus.
Well, See, that's the thing about Centennial, because you've got HPU on both sides of the
Yeah.
road.
Yeah, but they don't own Centennial.
So is that
Yet.
yet? Well, he might as well, because I mean, look at what he did to that poor road. Speaking of God and the devil.
Oh. That's what we call a seamless transition.
Yeah.
Oh, religion. What do you even say about it?
Well, remember, this is part of the Gen X series. So we're done with the media. Now we're going to move into philosophy. And so starting with philosophy, we'll talk about religion, and then we'll talk about politics. Gen X politics. What is
That's
it?
going to go well.
Yeah, so we'll do Gen X politics next week. But I figured we'll start with Gen X religion, because our generation, and you know this, well, here's the thing. Both of us grew up in the South.
Yes.
So we're Gen Xers from the Bible Belt.
Which is entirely different than being a Gen Xer in the Northeast or out
Yep.
West.
Yep. And so we had a very interesting dogmatic programming, I guess
man.
you would say.
Oh, man.
Theological programming. Yeah. Hellfire and brimstone. I used to joke at the church that Lauren and I were going to there for a while, when I would introduce myself when we first started going there. Of course, you have to talk about where you came from, like your background, your experience with the church, and that kind of thing. And I would always tell them, I grew up in these very rural, backwood Baptist churches that, and it was the kind of churches that when you walked out the door at the end of service, your butt was still hot from all the brimstone you were sitting on.
It got real.
Yeah, you could smell the sulfur.
And you're hearing this at the age of 6 years old.
Yeah.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah. One of the churches we went to did a series on Revelation. I kid you not, Jason. What's the chapter? Is it chapter 20 where he finally throws him into the pit?
Yeah, I think so.
And we spent at least 2 weeks on that one chapter. And about how if you're not in the book of life, you're going in there with him.
Did he talk about Russia?
Oh, yeah. We talked about Gog and Magog.
Mm-hmm.
That's earlier in the book. That's like chapter 16 or 17 during Armageddon.
How America was on the side of God and
Mm-hmm.
the USSR was on the side of Satan and the Antichrist.
Yep.
And we ate it
We
up.
ate it like it was candy. And they had, I think there was another preacher at a different church that had pretty much convinced his congregation that the locusts that they were talking about were Apache helicopters.
Is it any wonder that we left the church? I mean, for a significant period of time. Or in my case, changed denominations in a really radical way.
Dropped denominations, period.
Yeah.
I will only go to a non-denominational now.
Which has become its own denomination.
Yeah, I know, right? Our new neighbors right below us go to Daystar.
What's Daystar?
It's a non-denominational church over there on Rehoboth, the same place where Living Way was. There's at least 1, 2, 3. There's at least 3 non-denominational churches on Rehoboth Church Road, and then a big Methodist church. And get this, a some kind of, I don't know if it's Buddhist temple or
Really?
yeah, some kind of Eastern philosophy temple. And it's gated, so you have to be like a member to get in there.
Maybe it's a cult.
No, it's not a cult. It's like
It's an Eastern religious.
it's some kind of Eastern
organization.
religion, yeah. And I don't think it's Buddhist because I haven't seen any Buddhas, but it's that flavor. It's like Taoism or something. It's something. It may be Hindu.
Maybe it's Shintoism, so tree worship.
Maybe
worshiping your ancestors.
maybe. But it's like, and they're all right there in a row, man. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Oh, there's a Wesleyan church too.
Okay. I don't know. I said before we started that I have lots of opinions, but they've all gone. I don't know. I think the best place to start is a brief bio.
Yeah.
I was born. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, 15 minutes ago, I was born.
It's a reference to a TED Talk.
Yeah. He was 4 that year. He was 4. Well, he was 4 everywhere that year.
I don't know. I mean, I think we do something that maybe older adults don't do nearly as much, and that's church shop.
Mm-hmm.
Because how many churches have you been a part of since you were a kid?
God, I don't know.
And which one were you a part of the longest?
The longest was a little church called Missions Baptist Church. We were there for years. Yeah. But there was Sunlight, Friendship, Friendship, not to be confused with Friendly Chapel. Oh
Lord.
Yeah, Freedom was the last one. That was the one I said, enough. I can't deal with this anymore. That was the one where the deacon walked up and told me about the earrings, and it's like, you shouldn't adorn yourself as a woman. And I was like, I'd had enough.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm dead serious. And I looked at him, I was like, so you're telling me if I was walking down the street and you were behind me, you would look at the back part of me and think I'm a woman because I have earrings in my ears? And that was actually something that my stepdad taught me. My stepdad didn't buy into all that. Now, he criticized me, but he didn't buy into that whole men versus women thing. And he shot down this one preacher because he used to be a preacher. But he shot down this one preacher. They got into a heavy argument about women wearing pants. And he looked
serious?
Yeah, and he looked at the other preacher and he said, "Okay, then why don't you go to JCPenney's, go into the women's department and buy some pants. Get some of their pants." And it shut him up. But this man, like his daughters, one of his daughters was my age. They all had to wear skirts. He wouldn't let them wear anything else but skirts. And it was the jean. The uniform, the Baptist uniform, jean skirts, and some kind of blouse.
This is in, wow.
Yeah, this is up in Pilot.
When you were a kid.
Mm-hmm. Surrey County. Woo.
See, where I'm from, Baptists didn't do that. I mean, you could wear dresses, you could wear pants. I mean,
oh no, you did not wear pants to any of the churches I went to. They did not like it.
I mean, my mom would wear pants to work, and it was no one ever cared where I came up. We were too worried about Russia to worry about pants. I know this sounds stupid because there are going to be people who don't understand the whole Russia connection.
There was and I was actually telling my students about this about a year ago. We were in American Lit, and I was talking about the nuclear drills. We had tornado drills, and we had nuclear bomb drills.
Yes.
And the difference between the tornado drills and the nuclear bomb drills, the tornado drills, you went into the hall where the big cinder block walls were, and you got down in like this little ball. The nuclear bomb drills, you just got under your desk because they knew it's not going to happen. You're not going to make it.
We didn't even duck and cover for that. I think I learned at a very young age that if there's a nuclear bomb, you're going to die.
Yeah.
And you're telling this to a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, the things that we were taught. I don't think millennials have been taught anything quite so hard at such a young age. Well, I take it back. School shootings.
Yeah.
So they've dealt with it too.
Yeah, and Gen Z has dealt a lot with
more
school shootings.
More than any of us.
More than any of us. Yep. They're the ones going through the drills right now.
But it's in the 1950s when Christianity is weaponized.
Yeah.
And when who was it? Eisenhower, who put "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Was it him or FDR?
It's not FDR. It comes in the 50s.
Truman.
Maybe Truman.
It may have been Truman.
It's until the Cold War.
FDR put "In God We Trust" on the money.
Yeah, that's probably right.
That's it.
It's bizarre because religion religion was quite separate from the state in some pretty significant ways until the Cold War. And the argument I make when I talk to my students is that the Soviet Union was an atheistic government, and Christianity and any religion was actually banned by the USSR. No one who lived there could practice. They had to practice in secret. So it's not surprising.
How many missionaries did you meet that were going into Russia and sneaking Bibles in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But suddenly churches were somehow aligning themselves with American patriotism in a way that is really bizarre. As if God chooses countries in these fights. Politics was a regular part of my life growing up in the church. I learned more about politics from my preacher than I did anybody else.
And that had a lot to do with Reagan.
It did have a lot to do with Reagan.
Even though Jimmy Carter was a self-professed Christian.
And behaved like it.
Reagan out-Christianed him. The Hollywood actor.
Yeah. Well, Carter had Bible study in the Oval Office every morning.
Yeah. We don't hear about that, though.
Well, no.
What we hear about is how Reagan...
Because Carter didn't try to sell it, because
God,
it was
guns,
his
and
religion.
Reagan.
It was private.
That's it.
He's not going to enforce his religion on anybody else, but for him, he was deeply devout, whereas Reagan, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he was... It was very
political.
I don't know if he was trying to use religion that way, or if it just came natural.
Yeah.
Because I do think he was pretty devout by the time he was an older man. I actually don't doubt his Christianity, but whether he meant to politicize it or not, he certainly did.
But you were talking about weaponizing, and when we look at it, it's Reagan. Well, the whole neocon movement, weaponized it.
We came up, and this is true of maybe latter generation X. We came of age in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
and so I remember where I was when the wall came down.
Yeah, I do too.
This was a big deal.
It was
not a small moment, and since it got into the church, I've always thought of Christianity as being somehow deeply political. Even now, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. But even now, I, as an Episcopalian, I think of religion as having a certain obligation politically. Churches have to be involved in what we do in our everyday lives.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are they doing?
Yeah.
There's there's an individual who runs a food program in High Point, and he basically makes the argument that if you're not in the community doing work, then you're just a part of a social club.
Yeah. And I will give it to the church that the church that we just left and the church that we're associated with now. Both of them are big, and they're both non-denominational. They're both huge into charity. They are big into going out to the community. Not and you probably did this too as a Baptist. You know how you would go on witnessing, and you go door to door.
Yeah, sure.
Not that kind of thing. It was just, okay, this group needs help. How can we help them?
Don't ask what their religion is.
Yeah.
Just, you need a blanket, here's a blanket.
That's it.
That's what we do.
That's Christian charity. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yep. Not proselytizing.
No, and they're not out, and neither one of these churches that I know of now, this new church, we've only been with it for a few months, but neither one of the churches were the type that went out and protested. It's not about putting the message in your face. It's about showing you the message through work. And you're right, the Episcopalians are the same way.
Yeah, and we've been doing it for a while, and we do get involved with politics, but it's in the it's for the purpose of guaranteeing that no one is left unclothed, unfed, and that everyone has a place to go to find out if they're sick.
You're not out at abortion clinics threatening to blow the place up.
No, that's not witness.
No, it's not.
I mean, you can. There are ways to disagree with abortion.
And I remember, and you probably remember this too, when they started bombing the abortion clinics.
And that's they don't call it terrorism, but it was.
Yeah.
It's domestic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, the kind of politicization I remember was all about the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
And we would read the book of Revelation, I think, more than any other book. He would find a way to tie the Gospels into Revelation and talk about how these books, and he would also look back to the prophets.
The
and
70
say,
weeks of Daniel.
That's right.
Yeah.
And look back at the prophets and say, obviously Isaiah or Jeremiah or Habakkuk or whomever is obviously predicting what happens with the Soviet Union, and you need to gird your loins, boys and girls, because it's going to get real. And which side are you going to be on?
Yeah.
And then when the rapture comes,
Yeah.
because the rapture is another concept that we were, because we were Baptists.
Because we were Baptists, it was
bathed
huge.
in.
But the thing is like they had to string so much together to make it plausible.
Most churches don't have it.
Yeah.
The Episcopal Church doesn't have it. The Roman Catholic Church doesn't have it.
Yeah.
Eastern Orthodox doesn't have it.
The church that we just came from, the one before the one we're at now, he put it out plainly when he talked about the rapture. And this is one of the things I was like, thank you for saying this. But he said, it's called the second coming, not the second, third, and fourth coming.
The second coming happens exactly one time.
One time.
For everybody.
For everybody. And that's it.
Yeah.
He said, you're not going to find evidence for this magical thing that's going to happen. It's not going to happen.
No, they have to pull. It's really bad. Like if we were to, and we're qualified to talk about bad criticism because we study literary criticism.
Yeah.
And interpret works all the time. It's bad interpretation.
Yeah, it is a horrible interpretation. They string together 3 different authors that you can't even guarantee are the people that are supposedly writing this book.
In fact, it's probably they didn't write it at all.
Yeah, you got Paul, John, and Matthew, and they pull all of them together and they create this sequence of events that makes no sense whatsoever. And it all starts with that stupid verse at the beginning of chapter 4 where John talks about the beginning of the revelation, where he says, I was caught up. And they start there and then they bounce backwards into Corinthians and Matthew.
But it's irresponsible reading.
Yeah.
Because you have to, I don't know, I can understand why people would do it though.
Mm-hmm.
Because it provides some comfort that I'm not going to have to live through the worst of it.
Yeah.
I won't be here for the worst of it. I'll be taken up in the clouds, and only the ungodly are going to be left behind, and they're going to have to deal with it. This is the other thing I did not read when I was a kid, but the Left Behind series.
Yeah, I actually went and saw the Kirk Cameron movies.
Oh my Lord!
Oh, they were fantastic.
They were that bad.
One of the Now See This Here Now Thens, I have a running joke through the entire thing of Kirk Cameron's Left Behind movie. My thing, I said that he was predicting today and how Jesus is going to come back and everybody's going to go up to heaven and tweet with Jesus, but everybody else left behind has to use LinkedIn and Tumblr. An apocalyptic hellscape for sure.
Oh my God. That's poetry.
So it's just, and of course I'm making those references and I'm realizing that if anybody's actually watching it, less than a quarter of them are going to get it because that movie series is so bad and so forgotten.
I didn't watch them.
Yeah. Now a friend of mine had the books and he read the books and he was all about it for a hot minute.
Was he an evangelical too?
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, you had to be to read those books. Anybody else is going to look at that book and say, "What?"
Yeah. Well, it's a bit of a joke,
Yeah.
and you can see it outside of those circles.
Mm-hmm.
We were in Myrtle Beach, and we saw a car on the back of the car was a bumper sticker that said, "In case of rapture, can I have your car?" There was a service that this one company offered that in case of rapture, they would look after the people's pets after they were taken up,
because the
pets wouldn't have anyone to look after them anymore, because the owners would be taken up into the sky. And they had a business. I mean, people put money into it, just in case the rapture. They can know that Fido will be looked after. It's incredible.
I'm sorry, if I'm in heaven, I'm not worried about a freaking dog.
I mean, yeah, I mean, but
it goes back to that thing we were. You and I have talked about this before. I have never understood, and it's all propaganda. The whole thing is propaganda.
Oh, Revelation.
Well, the whole concept, because they tell they go to basically the downtrodden, and they tell them, your life, if you're struggling through life right now, but one day if you continue to do service through Jesus, you're going to have a big mansion beside streets of gold, right? And they throw the materialistic value at them, right? And when I was a kid, and I'm sure you did the same thing. When I was a kid, I was like, wow, that's pretty awesome. You get a big house, you get a street of gold. But then as I got older, I got to thinking, I was like, number one, why do I need a freaking house? And number two, why am I worried about materialistic things when, for me, someone who loves intelligence and who loves knowledge and has a ton of questions, I've got the Uber encyclopedia right there.
Yes.
I'm not going to be worried about a house. No. To me, that was all that. It started to not make sense to me. Why? And then it clicked. They have to use that to get people in the church.
Yes.
Get them in there.
Well, and John uses it because it's he's writing for people who are under the kind of a brutal yoke of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
To give them some hope.
Some hope.
I mean, I don't think he was writing propaganda. I think he's writing a text that's highly symbolic.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't expect his audience to take streets of gold literally.
Right.
That's not.
Well,
that's not what he's talking
what's
about.
the line from John 14 from the Gospel of John 14? Is in my Father's house is many mansions.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah, he's talking about rooms.
That's exactly right. But then you could get in. Here's another problem: is the Bible, the version of the Bible that we grew up with, is beautifully written. It is one of the masterpieces of Western literature.
It is.
It is also a really bad translation of the Bible as we have it.
And we're talking about the King James Version,
Yeah.
1612?
1611.
1611. I always mess up the...
I think it's 1611.
Yeah.
Something we can look up afterward. But I don't have... Well, I don't have the best memories.
Yeah.
I remember being afraid a lot.
That was the thing. It was always fear.
But I think even if we had not grown up in the Baptist church, would have been afraid. But I think it compounded the fear.
Well, because
it was a hard time to be alive.
It was. Well, I wouldn't say it was a hard time to be alive.
For a little kid, no, to be afraid of when's the nuclear bomb going to come.
Yeah.
And you'd think about this every day, and it sounds nuts to people
it's
now.
also, in the 1980s, you get the slasher, like the reinvention of the slasher flick. So now you're scared of the nuclear weapon. You're scared of Freddy Krueger and Jason.
Yep.
You're afraid that you're going to go to hell.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, it is. It was but it wasn't a bad childhood. It was just, there was constant fear-mongering everywhere.
Yep.
And then the mess with Ozzy.
Oh yeah, biting the head off.
Yeah,
whatever.
biting the head off the bat, and then they started playing his records backwards and finding all kinds of things where the devil is talking.
Oh, I was sent to a rock seminar. No kidding. Run by the. I don't know if it was a Southern Baptist thing, but this guy talked to all of us kids about how rock and roll is satanic, and he started playing records backwards and getting us to listen for messages.
Mm.
And of course, there were no messages, but once he said it out loud, you're like, oh, I can hear it now.
Yeah.
Because your brain starts filling in the blanks.
Exactly. Do you remember those little track pamphlets that were little comic books?
Yes.
There was one, I'll never forget this one. There was one where they were playing with the rock and roll thing, right? And there's this kid who's learned how to play guitar, and this guy in a nice suit walks up to him and says, "My name is Lou." And he signs him to a big deal. He gives him all the money, all the drugs, all the girls that he wants. And he signs the contract and everything. And then at the end, he realizes that he's empty and he accepts Jesus as his personal savior. And he turns to Lou and says, "You're gone from me, Lou Sipper."
No, I'm not familiar with that one.
That one was my favorite. I always thought that one was hilarious.
And who was the age group? Who was it for? Teenagers?
Yeah, it's for teenagers.
And it really...
I used to get all kinds of those little things, man. I had a ton of them. At one point, I was collecting them because I thought they were hysterical.
Yeah, I was terrified when I got home of all rock and roll. I was horrified. Because I loved it.
Yeah.
And I eventually came back to it. But for a while, I was so, it did a number on me.
Yeah.
Because he was trying to scare you.
Yeah.
That's all it was designed to do, was to create fear.
That's all it was.
That's not a way to win somebody over. It works for a while. But we got older. Mm-hmm. And we left home. And we saw the world. And
the world didn't match what they said it was.
None of it did. I mean, I went to UNC, which is probably the most liberal university in the state, aside from maybe Duke.
I don't know. Duke is pretty conservative compared.
App is pretty liberal, right?
Yeah, App and UNC Asheville.
Well, all of Boone is liberal.
Yeah,
but my views were challenged so much by people and the idea that there were people who didn't believe in God at all. I didn't understand. How can you, what do you mean you don't, what?
To be honest with you, I still to this day struggle with the idea of atheism. Not because I don't think that it can't happen. I just don't understand how you get to that place.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it has to do with philosophy.
Yeah.
You can do it with philosophy, but I started talking to these people. I'm like, these are really good people. Mm-hmm. Like these are decent people who,
and they're going straight to hell, Jay.
And that's when things started to kind of go awry.
Yeah,
because I was taught, and there's something kind of exclusionary and isolationist about the way I was taught as a kid, and you too, that anyone who does not believe this way is going to hell, and that includes Catholics. Catholics are going to hell.
Yeah.
Episcopalians, express lane.
Well, in the churches I grew up in, the Catholics had the express lane. Everybody else, the Presbyterians and the any other Protestant denomination, they were on a slower track, but they could be saved. You could still help them see the light. But yeah, the Catholic, forget it.
Once the Episcopal Church started ordaining openly gay people, on at least a couple of occasions, I was told that I wasn't a Christian.
Yeah,
because I'm a part of a church that openly, accepts openly gay members and marries people who are gay.
Yeah,
and I think if the church is, and this is leaping ahead, I think if the church is going to survive,
we have yet to talk about Gen X philosophy, but this is good.
It's, well, I mean, it's if the church is going to survive, they're going to have to start doing what the more progressive churches are doing.
Yeah,
because Gen Z isn't going to buy what I think
the millennials are not buying it.
No,
neither one of those two generations are buying it. Now, what's interesting about the millennials, what I've seen from them, they're going in a more spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual direction.
Yeah. But
the Gen Zs, I don't know how they're going to, because they're still kids. They're still figuring it out.
Yeah. Well,
I think the church across the board, in my opinion, the church across the board is in trouble, whether it's Catholic or not.
They are. The Episcopal Church's numbers are shrinking, but we've always been small. Mm-hmm. We've never been large, so it's not too frightening. Mm-hmm. You are seeing churches close their doors.
Yeah.
But no, what I was saying, and I kind of got us off track.
Sorry.
No. But my moment was when I would talk to these people and realize these are good people. How can they go to hell?
Yeah.
This doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
And I went from being a Christian to being an agnostic, and then I went to grad school and became an atheist. And I was an atheist for at least 4 years.
Yeah.
Before I became interested in Christianity again and became a Roman Catholic for 5 years. I did a lot of touring.
Oh, Jason.
And I learned a lot. but I also learned that I could not talk about my politics
Mm-hmm.
in my church, and that's a sign that you need to go.
And I think one of the things, and this is what was great with Lauren, this was where I saw Lauren grow a little bit. With the previous church we were with, she vocalized what I had been feeling. She said, I don't think, now she didn't use the word ideologically, but I'll translate for her. But she said, I don't think ideologically we belong there. We don't think the way they do. I said, you're right. We don't. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's nothing, and I told her, I said, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. It doesn't mean that we're right. It's just our method of thinking doesn't match.
It's not a fit.
There. Yeah, it's not a fit.
No.
So the place that we've been, which we haven't attended, we've been watching it on YouTube, because we've been lucky that the church we ended up seeking out has been actively keeping people away from the church, keeping them engaged online, doing all kinds of online things to keep them still engaged with the church, but not bringing them in to the actual sanctuary. They have been and I thank God that has been the case, because I was getting a little nervous there if they were towards the side of, God, or the country's not going to tell me how I can worship God, but he's been very emphatic. We're going to wait until we get the all clear. Not until, even after Cooper said that, you could do services in the parking lot and that kind of thing, he was like, nope, we're still going to do everything online. And so I was happy about that. And they match up better with us than, the way we think, the way, what we believe, that kind of thing. And she's still going through an evolution. She's because she was raised in Methodist churches.
They don't talk about the rapture at all. So
no, they don't.
There's
But
certain
there's other
baggage
things
she doesn't have to worry about.
There are other things that she's unlearning, and she is starting to come, and she's starting to do what I did in my early 20s. You were talking about how for you it was you got to college and you saw the world open up. For me, what happened with me was the long hair thing. The same thing that happened with the earrings. By the time the earrings thing happened, I was like, okay, I can't do this. But before that was the long hair. And one of the preachers said, you shouldn't have long hair. And I said, why not? And he said, in the Bible, it says you're not supposed to have long hair. And I said, show me. I've never seen that. And so he got out the book of Leviticus.
Oh, Lord.
And there is a chapter. And it specifically says, in like verse 5 or 6, you're supposed to shave your head. Yeah. Here's the thing. If you go up to the beginning of the chapter and then put it in context, they're talking about Jewish rabbis who entered the Holy of Holies.
Is this the same book that says you can't wear clothing of two different fabrics?
Yes.
So
if you're going into the Holy of Holies.
Yeah, but so no. I mean, even if you're not going to the Holy of Holies, who cares if you wear polyester and cotton? And
that's the thing. And I looked at him, I was like, but I'm not Jewish.
Yeah, we hang
and
on
I'm
to
not
the
a
weirdest
priest.
stuff.
And the Holy of Holies is gone.
I know. We hang on to the weirdest stuff.
We do. We cling to it.
They've latched on to homosexuality.
Yeah.
But it's a very convenient thing to latch onto that and throw everything overboard.
Yeah.
That doesn't work for us anymore.
Well, and I had to show Lauren something the other day. Well, not the other day, but 6 or 7 months back. She brought up, I think it's in Romans, where Paul talks about homosexuality, or maybe it's Hebrews. It's one of the two that we know Paul wrote for a fact, right? Yeah. And he mentions how you need to, and this is part of that. No, it's not. It's maybe it's Thessalonians, but he talks about how you need to purify yourself. Right. Yeah. And he sits there in the same chapter, talks about how if you're not married, don't get married.
Yeah.
But if you are married, love your wife.
Yeah.
Husbands, love your wives. Wives, obey your husbands and love them. And, and he talks about the cohesion of it. Right. Yeah. And then he talks about homosexuality. And I had to set it historically for Lauren and explain to her the homosexuality he's talking about is the Romans who had very little sexual bindings.
Yeah.
And what Paul is saying is control your appetite.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He's talking about the Romans and the way the Romans just didn't care.
Yeah, and you've got to set yourself apart. The whole point of Christianity was to set yourself apart.
Yeah.
And these are the ways to do it.
And this is how you do it. And this is how you become not Roman. And I explained that to her, and she still struggles with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I always forget. There are seven letters we know without doubt he wrote. There are 7 more he may have written, and then there are the others we know he didn't.
Yeah. That we think maybe Timothy wrote a couple of those,
possibly.
Right?
Well, again, though, these may be. We don't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't change much.
No.
I think I don't know. I don't know if we should. I don't know. Gen Z is a special case when it comes to religion.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going to do.
I don't either. I don't think they're going to be like us, and I don't think they're going to be like our parents.
But then you got someone like my kid. My son is an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me and my wife, and I don't know if this says something good or bad about the Episcopal Church. He said, wherever I go, I want to make sure there's an Episcopal Church there.
That's good.
He wants to go to church.
Yeah.
He doesn't believe in God, but he wants to go to church.
He likes the community.
He likes the community. He likes the ritual. He likes the pomp.
I think if churches are going to survive, they're going to have to push community.
They are. It's going to have to matter more than anything else.
Yeah, the dogma is going to have to be brought down a little bit, and the push for community and the need that the community has for a church.
Yeah. And offer potential to serve the larger community.
Mm-hmm. That'll
speak to them.
Yeah.
In ways that I don't think we know how. There's a great she passed away, but she's a scholar, not a theologian, I don't think, but named Phyllis Tickle. Yes, that's her name, Phyllis Tickle. She was an Episcopalian, but she wrote a book dealing with what's called emerging or emergent Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm becoming very aware that we've only talked about one religion the entire time. It's what I know.
But it's what we know.
It's what we. I mean, because you can make these claims about a lot of religions. You can talk about how Islam is going through or is going to have to go through some growing pains.
Yeah, they all
to
are.
reach Gen Z.
They're all going to have to. I think the only ones that are not going to have to grow too much or change too much are the Eastern philosophies.
Yeah.
Because they're almost universal.
They are. I don't know. But what she's talking about is the church going through a radical shift, and it's going to have to change in order to keep up with the kind of Christianity that people want.
Yeah.
And she talks about how a lot of this, and she's writing this years ago, okay, before the pandemic, how a lot of this is going to have to start happening online.
Yeah.
Because we don't always want to go to a building together.
Right. Yeah.
It can be done online.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. What is it? I mean, Christ himself said, my body is my temple.
Yep.
And I've always taken that to mean, and I've always interpreted it. Oh, I never finished my journey. But I've always interpreted, no, it's okay. I've always interpreted that to mean that, like, wherever I am worshiping. Yes. Like, I can just.
I still prefer the building. I like being because
that's because you like the pretty things.
But I'm also with other people. They're talking about that sense of community.
Yeah.
We're together in a room.
Yeah.
And that's important.
And sharing something.
It's not enough just to do it by yourself.
Yeah.
We're told when 2 or more are gathered in my name. Mm-hmm. Anyway, your journey.
Yeah. So the Leviticus thing. So he told me about that, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense because I'm not Jewish. The Holy of Holies doesn't exist anymore. I'm not planning on being a Jewish priest. And so I left there, and I'm like, I need to go back. Because at that point, I think I was like 17, 18, 19 years old, somewhere in there. I need to go back and read through this book again. Because the 2 previous times I had read it as part of Sunday school and as part of, I went to Christian school for 2 years. Went to Gospel Light Christian up here in Walkertown.
I didn't know that.
Yes, for 6th and 7th grades.
Wow. That's hardcore.
Yeah. And with that, I read the Bible cover to cover. And so I went back, and it was the 3rd time in my life that I sat down and read the whole thing. And I realized with that reading that a lot of the stuff they said was in there, and I'm reading their Bible. I'm reading their King James Version.
It's not in there.
It's not in there. And that's when I started to unwind a lot of this stuff. And I had, even in college, I still had a lot of that old Baptist beliefs system. But my first wife, the old time religion. My first wife, who was an agnostic, and a really good friend of mine who was an atheist. Just talking to them and just working things out, because I'm trying to reconcile all this. This doesn't make sense. Everything I've been told up to that point, this is how it works. And now I'm reading, it's not working. It doesn't work that way. And I slowly, over several years, just unpacked everything. And I started to see a different narrative. And I started to realize this is not what I want for myself. I started to understand God in a different way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was interesting because my wife, like I said, my wife is growing, and she's slowly, her thoughts and beliefs are starting to slowly evolve. And she said, how could you believe in God while you were drinking? I said, it's very simple and very easy. Drinking has nothing to do with your philosophies or ideologies. You can still believe. And my stepfather, God bless him, when I was at the lowest point of drinking before I went to rehab, he said, you just need to put it to Jesus. And I said, it doesn't work that way. I can't just give it, I'll die. But that's an old Baptist belief. You just hand everything over.
Yeah, but that's not how you beat alcoholism.
No, it's not.
You beat it with community again, which is also very Christian.
It was. So, and it was
a Christian organization, aren't they?
Not necessarily. So that's the thing they'll tell you when you walk in.
It's a selling point.
So here's what they tell you, and everything is contradictory. And let me first say this up front. If you're going to get sober, the first thing you need to do is go to rehab. Go ahead, go to the clinic, because you can sober up there and have medical professionals help you get through that. If I hadn't done that, so you don't die. If I hadn't done that, I would have died. I mean, they had me on seizure watch the first 7 or 8 hours that I was there, because they were sure I was going to have a seizure. So do that. And then when you come out, go ahead and get in AA. And stick with AA for a while. Because what AA does is it gives you a structure that you need at that moment. Because when you're newly sober, it is scary as shit when you first sober up. It's a scary world, and you're feeling things you haven't felt in a long time, and it nearly breaks you. It's crazy. I can't. There are no words to explain those first 3 months being sober. It was just insane. It was complete insanity. But AA gives you the structure that you can rely on. But one of the things that I have found is that as I have matured in my sobriety, is that AA is not working for me anymore. I don't need that structure. Now I have a counselor. And the counselor helps me build my own structure, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Now I got that away. I just want you to know AA is a wonderful thing, okay? For when you're first newly sober, it gives you something that you need desperately. Now, speaking of the God thing, it gets tricky with AA. Because you walk into those rooms and they will tell you, we are not a Christian organization. When we talk about God, because it's in the 12 steps.
Talking about a higher power.
They're talking about a higher power. Whatever that higher power is for you, whatever that thing is that you can hand things over to and say, because the trick to understanding sobriety is understanding that you don't have control. Once you get to the point where you realize, I can't control this anymore, then you can hand it over to something that is better than you, that is greater than you, that can. And so if that's God, it's whatever your idea of God may be. If that's what you got, do you hand it over to that? And then you're done. Well, not done, but then you start working and you're responsible to that higher power. And there are a lot of atheists in AA who use AA as their higher power.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying? And that's how they get through that. But they name that higher power God, so you supposedly can understand better.
But
at the end of every single meeting, they recite the Lord's Prayer.
even though they're not a Christian organization.
Exactly. I've never and I didn't get it then. And at one point I stopped saying it. I was like, no, we're not going to do this. I'm not going to be in a contradiction. And that's not to say anything bad about AA. It's just, we do, there are rituals that you go through with AA, because the thing with AA, the biggest thing with AA is getting yourself into a pattern to where you don't need to rely on any kind of substance. That you're locked into a pattern that if you disrupt that pattern, now you create chaos. And so with each meeting, it's built that way psychologically to get you used to patterns. But using the Lord's Prayer at the end kind of contradicts the very thing. They go through this whole thing about God and explaining God, but then they throw the Lord's Prayer at you at the end.
Meditation would make more sense at the end.
Yeah.
About whatever higher power you
have.
they
do, at the beginning, you do the Serenity Prayer.
Which again makes sense.
Makes sense. What's it? God. I mean, that's the opening line. God, grant me the serenity. Right? You're calling out to that higher power. And then you do the 12 steps and the 12 promises. Right? You read those. And you read the opening of the big book. It's like the first 3 chapters of the big book. You read that. But then at the end, you do the Lord's Prayer. And like you said, it should be a meditation. Or why not just pull something back out of the big book?
Yeah.
There are plenty of things to use. I mean, there's a book right over your left shoulder that is chopped up into, right shoulder. That little gray book is chopped up to all these different things that come from the big book and then reflections on those things. They could pull anything out there.
But they choose to do the Lord's Prayer.
They choose to do the Lord's Prayer. And so it complicates that thing about, AA and Christianity. Because they'll tell you we're not a Christian organization. Then why not do a Hindu prayer?
Muslim prayer.
Or Muslim prayer. So it's tricky. But like I said, if you're newly sober, AA or NA is a lot more. Well, they are tough.
Oh, I've got friends who've gone through it.
Oh, I would never go through NA. It is not because it's bad, but they are strict.
Oh yeah, you can't take Tylenol.
No,
I mean you can't take anything.
No. So, but AA, they'll let you smoke cigarettes and drink coffee. So, which NA does the same thing. It's just, but they are and they are hardcore. They are hardcore. They are a lot more strict than AA. Which there are some AA groups that when you go in, they'll hit you.
And some people need the strictness of
they
NA.
Do.
Yeah.
And the thing they'll tell you when you first get in there is find somebody who will be like a temporary sponsor until you find your right sponsor. That way you've got somebody to latch on to. And the second thing is find a group that you're comfortable with. That's your speed. So go around and find a meeting that you fit. Because they recognize not everybody. That's one good thing about AA. They recognize not everybody fits a specific template when it comes to coming to the 12 steps. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that everybody's going to go through the 12 steps completely differently. So what's that got to do with Gen X and religion?
Well, no, it ties into what you were telling Lauren.
Yeah.
I mean, this has... it doesn't mean you don't believe, but I can't help but think that you didn't change after you got sober.
Oh yeah, I did.
Certainly, your idea of religion was different.
Yeah.
Than before.
Well, and here's the thing: before I got sober, I went 17 years without walking into a church. So I said no.
You had an idol.
Yeah.
You didn't need church.
I didn't need church, but at the same time, I was disgusted with the politics of church. I was disgusted with the way people acted. Because to me, you're standing there in the pulpit, and you're telling me about how this woman comes to him and she's getting ready to get killed, and he stops them from killing her. And she's a whore. She's a prostitute. She is the lowliest of lows when you look at in that society.
Yeah.
She's the bottom of the barrel, and he saves her life. You're going to stand up there and tell me about that, and then come down and tell me I didn't dress properly?
Yep.
Really?
Yep.
So I'd had enough, and I didn't go near it. And so once I got sober, I didn't have like this massive spiritual awakening, but I did. Those old concrete walls that I had built up started to come down, and I was ready to get back involved. And I was in the praise band for a hot minute. So I was, to come from, I'm not walking near a church because they have pissed me off so bad, to I want to be involved. There's the coffee again. I'll have to reset it here in a second so we have hot coffee.
Are we doing 2 talks today?
No.
Oh, thank you, Jesus.
No. No.
You didn't spring it on me on the way here?
No.
Oh, by the way,
we're going to be talking about, first we're going to talk about religion, and then for the beta files we'll do evolution. I'm going to really give you a workout today, buddy.
I think churches, and I said this at the beginning, I think churches have, because I was talking to someone, a friend of mine, who goes to my church, and over the past few months, in their sermons, the sermons they're short, they're only 15 minutes.
Oh.
Because we have a lot of other things to do in the service.
Oh yeah, y'all are very active.
Yeah, kneel, stand, sit, kneel, stand, sit. One of my friends referred to it as Catholic aerobics. But over the past few months, our priests have been, because we have 2, and each one, they alternate on sermons.
Right.
And they've talked about current affairs in their sermons, and either the pandemic, or what happened to Floyd, or what's going on in the Black Lives Matter movement. It's going to come up. And one of my friends had said, I don't like it. I don't come to church to get the news. I'm like, it's not the news you're getting. They're trying to show you something. They're trying to show you that it's not you can't separate church from the rest of your life.
Right.
It's not like, I'm going to worship on Sunday, give me a happy message, and then I'll go to work on Monday. What you do in church should help you understand what happens out here.
Yeah.
And you can't ignore the pandemic. You can't ignore Black Lives Matter. You can't ignore police brutality. We have to have these conversations.
Yes, we do.
You can't ignore the statues that are coming down all over the country. Whatever side you happen to be on, you can't pretend it's not happening. And the homilies, or sermons, that's the word we use, homily, for sermon. The homilies are going to make references to them, and they're going to view them through the lens of the gospel. That's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But it's, for a lot of people, they think of it as being separate. This is the social club I go to on Sundays for an hour to an hour and a half, and then I go and eat lunch, and then I go back to work on Monday.
That's the Baptist church right there.
It is, in a nutshell. Yeah. It's kind of what I grew up with.
It's what I grew up with. You get there on Sunday. You look pretty. You sit there for, if you do the full blown thing, you're doing the Sunday school, the service. You're there for what? 3.5 hours, 4 hours almost?
That's just in the morning.
That's just in the morning.
Then you have the evening service.
Well, then you leave, and everybody goes Western Steer.
Golden Corral.
Or Golden Corral. You go home. You take off your church clothes. You get comfortable. And then, like, a couple of hours later, you put your church clothes back on. You go back to church Sunday night, and you're there from, like, 7 to 10.
Oh.
And then you go back on Wednesday night.
It's a lot of church.
You go back on Wednesday night.
Prayer meeting.
For the prayer meeting. Or the Bible study. Right? So one of the things about the non-denominationals, I don't know if y'all are doing this or not, but the non-denominationals have got this new idea. You don't have church in the middle of the week. You have small group. And what small group does is they take what the preacher, typically, well, the ones that we were involved with, take what the preacher talked about on Sunday and you expand on it. You answer questions that the congregation may have, and you do it with these small, very small groups throughout the church. And you can meet any day of the week.
We don't do small groups.
Yeah.
We have...
It's a way of doing the old Baptist thing.
It's disguised, though.
It's disguised.
We don't do that. We might spend... the only thing... So we have 3 services...
And I'm not saying small groups are bad. Don't think that. I'm just saying.
Especially if you go to a massive church, small groups are a way to tie into it.
It is, and you get to meet people that you probably wouldn't have met normally.
Without small group, you're not going to meet anybody because you're going to be overwhelmed by the fact that there are 1,000 people at your church.
Yep. Well, look at the church that we're at now. I'm sorry. I'm going to let you talk, I promise.
No, go ahead.
The church we're at now has 3 different campuses, and each campus has 2 services on Sundays. On Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
You have the early morning and the late morning. We always go to the late morning because Lauren. But on top of all that, they have small groups because you can't, in a church that large, that has that many services and that many people attending services, you can get lost really quickly.
Yeah.
And so the small groups actually work to give you a sense of being connected to the church, even though it's this massive thing.
I think Episcopalians are resistant to small groups.
Yeah.
I mean, we do things that small groups show up for. We have an 8 o'clock Eucharist, 9 o'clock, and an 11 o'clock Eucharist, and then at 10 we have what's called adult forum, where they do what we call religious formation. We'll talk about some issue, or maybe everyone's reading a book, or we talk about the readings, because the readings are for each Sunday have been predetermined like 30 years ago. That we read an Old Testament reading, a Psalm, a New Testament reading, and a Gospel reading, and those same readings are read in every Episcopal, I think Lutheran and Roman Catholic church around the world. And we would talk about one of those readings and try to contextualize it with what we're seeing in the world around us, whatever that is, and try to make sense of it. Some historical context. Usually, one of the priests is there to kind of guide the conversation. And then I'm involved with youth group, which is 4:30 to 6:30 on Sunday evenings. And then we have morning prayer and evening prayer every day. Okay, so we do a lot of church too, but
you do way more church than I do.
But it's not required. None of this
Right.
is required. The only thing that we would ever say is really required is just going to church that one time.
But then sometimes you have to actually lead prayer, right? Like evening prayer.
I lead evening prayer 2 to 3 times a week. Sometimes I'm filling in. I've had weeks where I led it 5 days a week, and it's a lot because I walk a mile there,
right,
and a mile back for a prayer service that lasts a grand total of 20 minutes. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm a part of that 10% of the church that's doing all that stuff. It's always a small number of people. But it was hard, man, going from when I first attended a Catholic church in Mississippi, which is where I became a Catholic. I'm like, there's one service. What else do we do today? What?
Is there food in the fellowship hall?
Well, they what they would do is if you came to the mass during the evening as opposed to morning mass, they had a spaghetti dinner afterward.
Ooh.
Every Sunday.
Ooh.
Yeah. And during Lent,
No fried chicken?
Well, in Mississippi it's catfish.
Right. Oh.
During Lent, they would because on Fridays you can't eat meat. You can only eat fish. If you want to eat meat, they would have the Knights of Columbus would do a catfish fry. You're talking about fostering a sense of community. Everyone shows up.
Right.
Because catfish And I had felt, and that was one of the things I fell in love with, was the fact that these people were all so close, and they were also welcoming of me and my family, with no strings attached.
Yeah. You know what I miss? Homecoming.
Oh Lord.
You want to talk about good
The food.
Well,
and every single night the visiting preacher would talk about how he ate too much.
Yeah.
But gluttony's bad.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't do it.
Oh my God. Okay, so the way my stepdad, when he was a preacher, he used to justify his weight because he was a big man. He was a big man. He would justify it by saying, what was it? He would use the one shall not live by bread alone, but by every word of God. And he would say, and I'm eating God's words every day.
But the only thing, there was a price to be paid for all the great food. It was a sermon every single night.
Yeah.
Holy God. And it would go on. And
it was
on.
worth it, dude. The chicken casseroles, the fried chicken, the tuna casseroles, the apple what do you call it?
Apple cobbler?
Yes.
Oh, I know. With the ice cream?
Oh yeah. And the chili and the baked beans, all the and they would make the baked beans. They weren't going and getting bushes. They were making the baked beans themselves. Oh,
Watergate salad.
Potato
Memories.
salad. Homemade potato salad.
Did we say fried chicken already?
We did, but we could say it again because
Fried chicken.
fried chicken and baked chicken. They had like 4 different kinds of chicken. Oh,
Did you ever go to summer camp
yeah.
through the church?
Yep.
Where did you go?
There's a place called Camp Joel. It was south of Lexington.
I went to Teen Valley Ranch, which was in the mountains.
Yeah.
And it was wonderful. This is something I can say that it was great.
Camp Joel was awesome.
And you felt
had a
very
ball.
close to God as a result of it, because there were devotionals and the music was always very touching.
Did y'all ever do the bonfires?
Yes.
What they would do is they would set up like multiple bonfires, and a group leader would take a group of kids, and we'd sit around the bonfire and we would talk.
It's amazing.
It was one of and we did that, like, we didn't do it the entire week, but it was like 2 or 3 times that week we did the bonfires, and that was just awesome.
Celtic,
and the food was actually pretty good.
Celtic Christianity has a term they use called thin places, and it's geographical locations where you have a sense that there's less distance between you and God.
Yeah.
The thin places, and those camps for a lot of kids are thin places, and a part of it's because you're in the mountains.
Yeah. We were by a lake.
Oh, that's nice too.
Yeah.
Having a natural landscape.
Call it a lake. It was a really big pond.
Yeah. Having a natural landscape changes it. You leave home, you leave family, you go into the woods and you worship.
Yeah. And
there's something powerful about that.
Yeah.
We've done outdoor Eucharists before in the woods, and it was amazing. I do. It is kind of, yeah. I've been very critical of it, but there are things about it that were very good for me.
There were things that were very good for me as well. Vacation Bible School when I was smaller.
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah, that was that 1 week out of the summer where you were at church until 8:00 at night. And you were having a ball, and you were making all kinds of really bad crafts
and singing.
There's a lot of singing. There's a lot of storytelling.
But no dancing because you're a Baptist.
Yes.
And no drums.
Yep.
Because you can go to hell. Because apparently God cares deeply about drums.
We had a drum set.
In the church?
In the church.
Oh my.
We did. We had a drum kit.
Did anyone play it, or was it there
as
a warning?
No, they did. They had a guy that came in. The one that I told you about, we went to the longest missions. My stepdad played guitar, and I got up there and played guitar with him a few times, and I played with him at New Testament. We went to so many churches, God. But he, pretty much every Baptist church in Surrey and Stokes County we visited. There was one called the Red Door Church because it was a white church with a big red door, and so they called it the Red Door Church.
That's
and it
clever.
It was like 180 years. I mean, it was old.
Small congregation?
Very small. Like, I think the membership roll was like 15 to 20 people. It was very small. Tiny little place.
A lot of those churches up there are like that.
Yeah, they are. And they are super old. Like, they have been there for eons.
Mountain churches.
Yep. So, but no, there were good times. There were a lot of good times.
The theology was just not a good time.
It was scary, and it was, looking back on it, I didn't like the propaganda. It was it was a lot of propaganda.
It was.
And that is the biggest thing I have with the Baptist faith. I would be happy to be a Baptist today if it didn't have the propaganda, because they still have it. It hasn't changed.
Well, no, now instead of Russia, it might be Russia now again too.
Yeah. Putin.
It's probably China.
China or the liberals.
Yep. Or the Middle East.
Or the Middle East. Islam. Yeah.
And the liberals, as you say.
But it's the same, it's still the same trick. It's scaring you to sit in that pew.
It's weird though, because, and I think you're right. I mean, liberals do come under attack in a lot of these more conservative churches.
Mm-hmm.
But when shit gets real back home,
mm-hmm.
I'm one of the first people they call to pray for them.
Yeah.
And you can tell that there's a certain, they're like, they know I'm a Christian, and they want me to pray for them, but they also know I'm a liberal.
Yeah.
So on a certain level, a heathen.
Yeah. But
they don't know how to square those two.
Right. Well, it's kind of like that thing. Now, I don't know how much Pelosi was actually being honest, but if her Catholic faith is to be believed, what is wrong with her praying for him every day? When she admitted she prays for Trump every day.
Not a problem at all.
There's not a problem at all. What does it matter?
I pray for him every day.
Who doesn't?
And I'm a liberal.
If anybody is a true believer, they should be praying for all of them. To be honest, I mean, I'm just throwing that out there. But the attack that she got because she said that.
Because she's a liberal.
I know. It's ridiculous.
There's a lot of hatred in it now too, and I think that's not Christian at all.
No, and the other thing that liberals can't be Christians is stupid.
Hello.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I had a friend of the family tell me that the Episcopal Church didn't practice the gospel, and I said, "Which part are you talking about? The part where we go visit people who are sick and in prison? The part where we feed the poor? Which part exactly are you saying we don't follow?"
Well, and most of the rules that they come up with are from Paul. They're not from the Gospels.
They're not. Well, Paul writes the first documents.
Yeah.
These are the first Christian documents we have.
Yeah.
Are by Paul. Yeah, but if you read the Gospels,
in this fanatical sense,
different.
and this fanatical sense that you have to be baptized if you're going to be fully saved, that it's part of the process, that it has to be done.
Yeah.
There's nothing in there that says you have to be baptized. Paul lays it out in Romans and says,
these are the
just
things.
Believe.
Now, Jesus does say in Matthew, go out and proclaim the kingdom and baptize.
Yeah.
So it's important to him.
It's important.
But I can't
but
see
what is it?
I can't see God saying, I don't know, Joe. I mean, I was on board for a while there, but then I found out you'd never been baptized. So I don't know how to tell you this. You're going to have to go to hell. I mean, baptism is best.
Yeah, well,
because again, it's community.
It's community.
You're baptized among your peers. They're part of the covenant with you.
And one of the things that, and I actually had to explain this to Lauren and show her, like, when you look at that, I think it's John that has the full story where he goes down, he's baptized, he gets out, and he goes into the wilderness for 40 days, right? That whole string of events. The first thing he's doing with the baptism is symbolically, he's ending the first part of his life.
Yep.
He's done.
Yep.
And now he's starting anew. And so then when he goes into the wilderness, he is now physically purifying himself.
Yep.
He's getting all that stuff out.
Yep.
Because the next thing he does, he starts the ministry
3
immediately.
years.
Yeah. And I had to explain, and I said, so when you look at baptism, what baptism is supposed to be is symbolic.
Yeah.
That you're putting the old life away and you're starting anew.
Well, and then you get into the argument of, well, and for then there are those who are of the persuasion that it's not only symbolic, but it also has another element.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's done in a community.
Mm-hmm.
Baptisms do not take place in private.
Yeah.
They can't be. In fact, for us and for Catholics, a part of the baptismal, part of the words you say is asking the congregation, will you support them in this venture? And that doesn't say it in those words. And everyone in the congregation says, we will, with God's help.
Right.
It's meant to be done in large groups.
Mm-hmm.
You can't baptize in private because a part of it is a covenant with a community.
Yeah. Yep.
What about other religions? I mean, I was never raised in anything else.
Yeah.
But we're more multicultural than we've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
We're surrounded by people of different faiths in a way that we've never been. I have a feeling that this is really hard for more conservative Christians to see this happening.
Yeah, and I think it's really hard for the younger generations who are being exposed to diverse ideals that we were not exposed to until we got to college. We were told those ideals were dangerous. I remember growing up being told not only is Mein Kampf evil and dangerous, but Communist Manifesto was just as evil and dangerous. And for years, I was scared to go near that book.
I was told the same thing.
But now we're not doing it with Mein Kampf, but now the Communist Manifesto is not a dangerous book.
No.
Marx is not dangerous anymore.
No. And as a result, a little less sexy than he used to be.
Yeah, I know.
Because he's no longer forbidden.
That crazy hair and beard.
Yeah.
The Walt Whitman look that he had going on there. I mean, for a minute it was hot, but now it's not. Only Uncle Walt can pull that one off.
Oh my. You have a religion like Islam that is growing at not an exponential rate, but if you are a conservative Christian, that must be horrifying.
Yeah.
Because you see it growing in this country, and you see Christianity shrinking.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it. I mean, it's getting smaller and smaller.
And the fundamentalists are being told you have to make room for them. After years of the fundamentalists telling themselves Islam is evil, they're out to destroy us, now the culture is looking at them and saying, you're going to have to make room.
Yep.
And so it probably is terrifying for those older fundamentalists.
We used to see more progressive churches inviting imams and people who are in leadership positions. We invited not an imam, but a guy who was a part of in the leadership of a Islamic center, and we learned a lot about Islam that day and talked to him about our beliefs. And I thanked him for the visit, and he hugged me.
Yeah.
If you could have that kind of physical contact with a Muslim as a conservative Christian, you might end up changing your mind. But the problem is most of these conservative Christians have never met a Muslim in their life.
Yeah.
Never had a conversation with them, so they don't realize just how closely aligned our religions are. Mm-hmm. They are very similar. Aside from the fact it's the exact same God.
Yeah.
Many of them have never really had a conversation with a Jew.
No.
Yet somehow they're afraid.
Well, they've never had a conversation with a Buddhist.
No.
Or a Hindu.
No.
Or Taoist.
Nope.
I mean, they haven't sat down and talked to them because they're afraid. This is the thing that, and we'll have to wrap it up with this one. This is one of the things that Christopher Moore talks about in Lamb at the very beginning and at the very end.
Still haven't read it.
You need to read that book, Jay. So fantastic. But he says at the beginning, I'm not out to change your faith. And if you walk away from this book and allow this book to hurt your faith, your problem is not with me. Your problem is with your faith. And a lot of them are so afraid. It goes back to that thing we've talked about numerous times. Why would God give us the ability to question him and not question him? We have to question.
Yeah.
In fact, and my argument has always been the fact that I'm questioning him actually shows more of my faith
yes.
than not questioning him.
John Milton said that a faith untried is no faith at all.
Yeah.
And he's not wrong.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, why? What did I do? Why?
I was taught not to question when I was a kid.
I was taught not to question him too, because what I was told, and we've talked about this too, they're afraid of intellect. If you question him, it leads to your own demise, because you start to get inside your head.
Well, they take it straight from Paul,
Yeah.
who makes some of these claims too, that to be careful about people who make sophisticated arguments.
Yeah.
And
Well, he says they become so wise, they become foolish.
yeah.
But I don't think he's talking about like they become so intelligent, they become foolish. I think what he's talking about is they go down rabbit holes.
Yes. Sophistry.
Yeah.
Which is entirely different than wisdom.
Yep. So, but questioning, there's nothing wrong with. Christ questioned him
Oh, yeah.
in the Garden of Gethsemane. He questioned him.
Questioned him on the cross. Why have you forsaken me?
Yeah. Yeah. Why have you forsaken me? And then Gethsemane.
Yeah.
Is there another way?
Please.
Yeah. Please.
I don't want to
I
die.
don't want to do this.
God, this really sucks.
It's probably the most human moment of the entire gospel.
He's weeping.
Yeah, he is. He's terrified. He is scared to death.
Well, he should have been. It sucks.
Yeah.
It's a horrible way to go.
He's realizing what he's got to do. And it's just, oh my God. Are you sure that... I'll do anything.
It's a great moment.
It is a wonderful moment because it shows his humanity.
The other movie, then they're talking about movies they were afraid of, The Last Temptation of Christ.
They were terrified of that movie.
Which is an affirmation of Christianity.
It is.
Because he has an opportunity and says,
No, I'm going to do this. Yeah.
It's a brilliant
But
movie.
they missed that. They missed that because...
Well, they don't watch it in the first place.
I know they don't.
They just hear about it and think, oh, that's obviously not Christian. That Christ had one last moment of temptation where he was going to get off the cross and life was going to be good and he's going to die in his bed as an old man.
Yeah.
But no thanks.
Yeah. This is what I need to do. And that's the great twist at the end. But that's another thing about the churches we grew up in. They just... blind fundamentalism.
Now, had Kirk Cameron been in The Last Temptation of Christ... You talked about evolution. I know we've got to wrap this up, but that's the other thing. It informed our views of science.
It did.
Because we grew up as creationists.
Yep.
The Earth is 10,000 years old or less.
6. The number for us was 6.
Yeah, well, that was the number for us too.
Yeah.
They started to expand it, but still, it's very young. It was created in 6 days.
You and the thing is, you were taught to distrust carbon dating.
Oh yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah. They almost had me convinced too.
Yeah.
And then I took AP biology. I'm like, but no, you're wrong. This evolution makes sense. It was the first chink in the armor for me, was evolution.
Well, you know what got me? And I've actually talked to you about this before. If you look at the sequence of events in Genesis and look at the sequence of events in evolution, they almost line up perfectly. And so all of a sudden, all that talk about 24-hour days versus a day is 1,000 years and all this stuff just went out the window. And I'm like, my question has always been, how did they figure that out 4,000 years before Darwin? How did they know? Nobody has answered that question for me. How did they figure that out? They figured out the sequence. Yeah, they're not the only ones to figure out the sequence.
They just get it.
Yeah.
It's intuitive, I think, and I think that's the power of Darwin, is he was able to say the intuition is not wrong. I mean, he was not the first person to advocate evolution.
Yeah.
He just provides the best evidence.
Yeah.
And takes it to its natural conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
Evolution means that we weren't always humans.
Yeah.
That we come from something else. But even to suggest it, I mean, my family still probably believe that the Earth was created in 6 days. I've tried to advocate for evolution with them, and they won't hear it.
Well, if you replace the word day with stages,
yeah,
it changes everything.
It changes everything. Unfortunately, though, there's no. I can't have that conversation with them.
Yeah.
And that's, again, there are a lot of reasons why I could never go back. That's one of them. A denial of science, and that's why I think a lot of, like, the whole anti-mask thing.
Yeah.
These are the same people who've denied the science before.
Yeah, they're afraid of it.
They deny it with evolution. They deny it with climate change. They deny it with masks. Most of them, thankfully, are not anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
That's an entirely different group of people.
There are a lot of anti-vaxxers in the non-denominational churches.
Are you serious?
Yes, there's a lot of them.
Wow. Why?
They are the same reason why there are a ton of anti-evolutionists in the Baptist church and the Methodist church and the Pentecostal church, because they're afraid of the science. It comes down to being afraid of the science. Kurt Vonnegut, when he wrote Cat's Cradle in 1961, I think it's either 59 or 61. When he wrote that book, he was mocking how religion offers nothing except a fear of science. He was showing it. He said, there it is. They're afraid, they're terrified of science. But the thing they turn to gives them absolutely nothing.
They'll still go to the doctor.
Mm-hmm.
What do they think that is?
But then they double question it.
Yeah.
Right? And they'll sit there and say, we got to pray. There's nothing wrong with prayer. We got to pray. And if the doctor doesn't find it, we got to keep praying. So that God will show
the doctor.
And then, of course, you've got the ones that just won't even trust the doctors. And they don't go. God will take care of it.
Christian scientists.
Yeah.
Now, that's a contradiction in terms, if I've ever heard one.
Mm-hmm.
Given that they have no respect for science.
And here's the thing about intelligent design. I enjoy the argument of intelligent design. What I hate is that Christian scientists took it and ran with it.
Yep.
And they ruined any chance for intelligent design to actually get any kind of foothold. Because all it is, if you look at the basic argument, it's evolution from a different point of view.
Yep.
That's all it is.
The Earth is still 4.6 billion years
Yeah.
old. The universe is still almost 14 billion years
Yeah.
old. That doesn't change anything.
No.
Yeah, but they ruined it.
They did. The Christian scientists took it and ran with it and ruined any chance for that to actually gain any kind of positive traction. Well, and to be fair, people like Richard Dawkins jumped all over it too. God bless him. I love him.
I like him when he's talking about everything except religion.
Yeah.
Because he creates a caricature.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of
This is why I love him, because it's a comedy show.
It is a comedy show. Maybe this should be the very last thing.
Right.
There are those on the outside who don't understand religion either.
Yeah.
Who think they do.
Yeah, and he's one of them.
It's mind-blowing how little they know, because, again, they create a caricature and they just assume everyone believes the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a straw man.
Yeah.
It's really easy to defeat a straw man because you created him.
He calls it the God problem.
Yeah, or God delusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I understand his concerns.
Yeah.
And the Christian he describes, he creates in his argument, is not a Christian I'd want to know either.
No.
I don't blame you. I mean, I get it, brother.
Amen.
But I'm not that Christian, and most of the Christians I know are not that Christian, and most of the Jews and Muslims I've met are not those believers either. It's not that simple.
It's not. And he doesn't
deal with progressive Christians at all. He won't touch them with a 10-foot pole.
I don't think it's that I don't know. Richard Dawkins is a wonderful conversation to have some other day. I love him, not because he's right or wrong, but because he's hilarious.
He is. And he's a sweet man.
He is.
Really is. He's wrong about so much. I understand why he's saying it. I get it. I'm all for it.
My favorite thing that he ever did is just watching him squirm with Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's just sitting the whole time. You can tell he is just so tense. He knows he's been had.
Well, and he admits that he has physics envy. It's my favorite part of the entire thing. He's like, it's not uncommon for other scientists to have physics envy because physicists are just smarter than everybody else on the planet. He's cool. I've watched 2-hour long videos with him and then gone to evening prayer.
Yeah.
So obviously they didn't take hold.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. No, it's hard for his stuff to take hold. But like I said, he's so much fun to listen to.
Yeah.
I love him to death. I used to hate him, but then I realized, no, it's a lot more fun to love him.
Yeah.
Because he's just so fun.
He is fun.
All right. That's it for this week. As I noted, next week we're going to be talking about Gen X politics. We didn't actually get to Gen X religion. But you had 2 Gen Xers from the South talking about growing up in the Bible Belt. So there you go. So next week we'll talk Gen X politics, which should be a lot more egalitarian. Instead of just the point of view of a couple of Baptist boys that grew up in the South.
Yes.
So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Make it a great day.
Now it's time for Dr. J.